Detroit, Detroit, Detroit is different. Detroit is different. Detroit is different. Detroit is different.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And I'm welcoming back a guest from last year that actually is, what we consider a new Detroiter. And she's definitely made Detroit her home. And she shares that on her first episode and why this city kind of speaks to her heart and her mind, but definitely connecting with people towards wellness and many more things between those spaces where heart and mind sometimes won't connect, but they get to through her. Dr. West, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Kyrie. I am always delighted to be in sacred space with you.
Wow. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Definitely. All right. So this conversation kind of came about where I know you got some travels coming up soon across the world and everything. And you were like, hey, if we're going to touch base soon, then we need to touch base soon. So I know we'll get to that, but more so, what's happening now? What's your take? You've been here like another calendar year so far. What's your take on your Detroit experience right now and offering wellness solutions to organizations and businesses and people in this area?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that we're starting there. So you know that my heart bleeds for Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years, May 31st.
Mm-hmm.
And we're making really good traction when it comes to really understanding the well-being landscape here, what makes Detroit unique in terms of its well-being practices, and where is there room for Detroit to glean from other parts of the world so that we can amplify well-being for Detroiters. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about is we're going to be hosting, we meaning my nonprofit, Be Well Beautiful People, a global well-being summit that I get the pleasure of partnering with you on and so many other amazing organizations within this community to help to put Detroit on the map when it comes to being a leader in terms of well-being and the practices that are really connected to the heart of the beautiful cultural context of this city. And then also an opportunity to learn from other people in terms of how we can amplify, how we impact the world with our change making and infusing well-being and the arts as the universal language of well-being. So lots of tenants. It's going to be a huge gathering, 3 days, and we're really excited about doing that in October.
Okay. And this kind of goes, as you say, talking about the well-being community. I guess even before we get what's happening in Detroit, I think let's talk more so from like a times right now, societal, definitely in many conflicts, war-based conflicts that involve America directly and a little bit indirectly. That's impacting some of the economics, certainly across the world. But along with what's happening with economics across the world, just people looking for other ways of natural healing. Some of it is really because these options may serve them and suit them better, but also just due to what resources are available for what health looks like. So can you speak a little bit now to, at this time, some of the people that are walking towards these natural and looking more so in the wellness world as opposed to, I think, a lot of what was often looked at in our scope from a society of let's find cures when we have illnesses, sicknesses, or challenges that we're dealing with within our health.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of times when people think about the well-being practices that particularly we can utilize on ourselves to help to help us heal ourselves are looked at as new age practices, which I find really fascinating because it's really old age. We're bringing the old into the new, but a lot of times it doesn't necessarily correlate with the traditional ways that we think about well-being. And so when we think about healthcare, for example, healthcare has its place, But a lot of times when we're thinking about being well, we think that the healthcare system is the route to go. The reality is that the healthcare system is really about treating disease and not necessarily about supporting our well-being when it comes to mind, body, spirit. And one of the main things that we can do to support our well-being is actually being in community. One of the largest bodies of research, the longest bodies of research that's out there is by Harvard to really help us to understand what does it take for someone to live well? What is going to have the most significant impact on someone's well-being? And more than anything, it's our social connections, right? It's the health of our relationships. And so when we think about the times, right, and a lot of times people feel that in moments like this, we should isolate, right? It's a privilege to take care of ourselves. We don't have the luxury of doing that when the world is on fire. My take is actually that times like this is we should be supporting ourselves and our well-being more tenaciously during these times because our energy is being focused on things that are actually can be, challenging for our health, right? The more news that we consume, right, as when we're thinking about the war, for example, and yes, we need to be in the know, but focusing on the war, for example, and if we're consuming it all the time, think about how that's going to make someone feel. Right? You're not going to feel very hopeful. And not to mention that feeling that you're feeling is not just the feeling itself. It's also about what is that feeling creating in the body. So a lot of times when people think about well-being, they're not necessarily connecting it to the mind or what we feel. And actually, our mind and what we feel is very much connected to what our health outcomes are. And what research is showing is that on top of having good people by our side when we're ailing, right, and if we're in recovery, it's also about our mental space. If we believe that we're going to bounce back, if we are thinking about positive things, if we're engaging in positive activities, the body is going to respond in a positive way to help us aid in the recovery process. But even outside of that, right, if we're talking about day-to-day well-being, we're talking about the extent to which we're able to control our thoughts. And if we can control our thoughts and wire our thoughts to have more positive thinking, then we can actually equate more optimal health outcomes for ourselves, right? And so if we're talking about, this new age or indigenous practices, all of them have the same kind of benefits, right? So if we're talking about rest, sleep alone is going to help the body to heal. If we're and that's not necessarily indigenous, it's just good practice for us. If we're talking about things like yoga or breath work or meditation, nature-based activities, all of these things are going to have the same kind of outcomes. Why? Because it's really about getting still, slowing the body down. And if we can slow the body down, it helps us to be able to control our thoughts, to control our feelings, all of those things. And it's because we are a compilation of mind, body, spirit.
Okay. And in this space, you've been working with people on these wellness journeys, you yourself, obviously, in that same space. What is it that some of the people that you've been working with closely, I would say just kind of over these past 12 months, what are they speaking to? And what responses have you provided as solutions or, I don't necessarily know if I want to use the term solutions, but practices in which could be explored to move on to that wellness journey?
Yeah. So, I really believe that one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves is to care for ourselves, right? And so if you're doing the kind of work that I do in the change-making space, much like you are a change maker, right? There's so many people out here who are doing impactful work in the world that's not necessarily connected to well-being, but we are inserting ourselves, and which means that we are exerting a lot of energy, right? So when we think about energy, we only get so much energy in a day. And if we're not filling our cup in some ways, right, through the kinds of practices that I just named, then we are actually setting ourselves up for burnout.
Okay.
And so the reason why I said it starts with self is that if we are not cultivating a practice of self-love, if we're not cultivating a practice of finding intentional moments for joy, practices that allow us to be intentional about being in community, investing in our relationships, if we're not doing things to fill our cup from a mind, body, spirit perspective, then we are actually not engaging in sustainable well-being practices.
Okay, so I want to get a little bit more specific into what you're saying as these are ideals that are spoken and brought up often. What does intentionally moving towards more of a community space, what does that look like? Like an example, or maybe a couple of examples for a person.
Yeah, that's a great question. I talk about this a lot in my new book, Love Will
Mhm.
Liberate,
Which
and
is which the book is right there.
right here,
It's there.
exactly,
It's
exactly.
there.
My baby,
Yes.
one of my
Uh-huh.
my proudest labors of love, I will
We
say,
go.
because I know what this book can do to help
Mhm.
support people in building community,
Mhm.
and knowing what building community can do to help to support us in our vitality and our overall well-being.
Okay.
And so I believe that community can be created anytime, anywhere. And as you know, I've traveled the globe. I've been to 43 countries across 6 continents.
Mm.
I have met people all over the world, some of which are my close friends, right? So let's talk about Detroit. So I've been here almost 2 years. How I've built community here is showing up in community. So I find spaces where there are like-minded interests in hopes that I will meet people that I have synergy with, right? But it starts with actually finding out the landscape and then showing up, and then we have to actually put ourselves out there in these moments.
So finding that landscape, what does that look like? What did you do to, get to that?
Yeah, a lot of research, right? And as you know, in Detroit, there's a plethora of things to do always, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the things that makes Detroit magical. But I would say no matter where someone is, communities are everywhere, right?
And I hate to be so like direct specific.
No, I love
but,
this,
like,
'cause,
how
I
do
can
you
be
like? Where
kinda
do you look?
nebulous.
Where do you look? Where do you look to go to?
Yeah.
Especially when you speak to like-minded as it's so interesting. It was a post that shout out to Baba Malik. Baba Malik Yakini put up a post the day so people can kind of get an understanding of when we're recording this. We're recording this on March 22nd. Earlier, which this is a new week, but in the middle of last week, and I forget what title she has, but I know she's high up in the Donald Trump administration in reference to definitely, I want to say like a Secretary of Defense or something, but Tulsi Gabbard, who is native to Hawaii, one point in time was a Democratic member of Congress, I believe, and then she became a Republican candidate, but is a part of the Trump cabinet right now. And she had a hearing called before Congress to speak to what was happening. And then Baba Malik made this post in reference to this hearing. And in her hearing, she shared that though she is a person that looked into what level of threat assessment that Iran could have in reference to nuclear weapons and to the United States of America. And she came back conclusively that it was not to that point, but it's the president that will make the determination if something's an imminent threat. So I know I'm giving a lot of preface to this, but in his post, he spoke to, she's vegan, she's studied yoga most of her life. She goes on like these hiking retreats with groups of people. And he's like, you sometimes think that these are your people, but these same people are, taking this stance in an act that he does not support, which I don't support this conflict at all either, but I'm still framing this more so to get back to that question of that like-mindedness.
Yeah.
And at times a person could be like-minded in this, and this, but then when we get here, where there are many differences.
Yeah.
So in seeking something like that, how do you get to your like-minded community? And I use that example because I'm thinking a lot of people that watch this know who he is. And even if you don't know who he is, I think technically, if you're a little politically aware, you know who Tulsi Gabbard is. But that's why I uplift that.
Yeah, it's a really important distinction that you're talking about, right? Because one of the things that harm us is that when we think that we're around our people, right? And our heart is open to them, and it sets us up to be harmed by them. And I talk about this in the Love Liberation Framework, which is based on my extensive research. And it's a 9-point framework that helps people to find and keep their people. And so one of the ways that we find our people is not just the location itself, right? Like you said, and it's not just based on the interests that you have and you share with people. It's also about, is this relationship rooted in the same values that I have? Is reciprocity present? Is vulnerability present? And the only way that we can know that is that we have to take risks, right? So we don't give all of ourselves to someone in the beginning, right? We want to think about this as layered. So let's say I show up to a yoga retreat. And we've got yoga in common. And then I start to talk to someone and I realize that in talking with them, oh, we don't actually have the same values, right? Or energy is one of our greatest gifts. And if something doesn't feel right, and I talk about intuition in the book, if something doesn't feel right, we can probably rest assured that something is not right. And it could be something within ourselves, but it could also be that small, still voice. I call it God, universe, source, creator, that is trying to protect us from a person that can actually do us grave harm. You know, and I'm sure that for you, for me, for many people that are listening, there's been lots of people that have come into my life and their purpose was to extract from me, right? So they show up, they act as if that they are, you know, on the same page that I am, that we have the same interests, that there's alignment. But if we really sit with people and if we listen to people and if we wait, time is one of our greatest gifts. And so this is why we can't give too much of ourselves away too quickly. And we also can't get caught up in some of the magnetism that happens when we meet someone for the first time and we feel that this person is familiar to us, right? We meet people like this pretty consistently. I do, at least. But what I found is that with people like that, I have to slow things down even more because a lot of times when we find ourselves attracted to people, what we don't realize is that the attraction is rooted in something so much deeper. And I talk about this in my book. So when we find ourselves drawn to friends or romantic partners, for people particularly that have had trauma or non-secure attachment, and about 35% of the population has what's called a non-secure attachment style. Our first line of our sense of self and our sense of importance comes from our caregivers. So if you're raised in a household that you had a parent who was emotionally unavailable, let's say, right? You don't have to be traumatized. Let's say that you grew up with money, you had all kinds of opportunities. On the surface, everything looks like you have a normal, healthy family. But emotionally, you weren't able to express yourself, right? And you had an emotionally unavailable parent. Well, what happens is that you adapt to a non-secure attachment style. And that non-secure attachment style affects your ability to build and sustain relationships as you move forward. And so for a person that has a secure attachment style, they're able to build relationships with people fairly quickly. They usually are very social. They have a lot of connections with people. They're able to sift through relationships quickly. They take more risks in relationships. Why? Because they have a much more positive sense of self. They feel like they're worthy of love, they're worthy of connections, and they're willing to put the work in and the time in to sift through the people to be able to find the people that are actually for them. But that takes a lot of time and effort. And if we're not aware of the baggage that we're bringing into relationships, what happens is that we find ourselves in negative patterns that are really detrimental, right? So when people say, oh, you know, I find myself in a pattern of, you know, I can never find the right romantic partner. Well, it's probably not the romantic partners that's necessarily the problem because we're attracting these people in our lives. And not only are we attracting them in our lives, we're allowing people to stay in our lives much longer than what we should allow them to. And this is where really good boundaries come into play. But if you don't have a strong sense of self, you're not going to be able to have a strong sense of boundaries either, right? Because people that have good boundaries, you have good boundaries because you believe that you're worthy, and you believe that your needs and your desires are important, just like somebody else's needs and desires are important. And so you're always working to get your own needs met while also working to get the needs met of other people. So back to the question that you started with, right? How can you assess whether or not the people that seem aligned are your people? Well, you do that by taking time to actually be in conversation. So vulnerability is a great example. Let's say that you meet someone, you think there's synergy, you go out to coffee with them, right? I'm a big coffee and tea person as my first point of entry.
All right.
And let's say that you share something personal with this person, right? And I call it low stakes because in the beginning, you're getting to know somebody. You don't need to share very deep things with them, right? But a low stake something that's personal. See if they share something low stakes and personal about themselves too. Right? So we want to think about a relationship like a ping pong match, not from a competitive standpoint, from a standpoint of is that when I serve, do you serve? And if you don't serve, then that tells me that you're not ready to put in the kind of work that I'm willing to put in when it comes to relationships. A lot of times people talk a good talk, but the test really comes into play with what are people actually willing to do in relationship. That's why we can't get caught up in what people say, because words sound really, really good, but actions is the real testament to how people are.
It's so many questions I have even in what you just shared. I'll start here. One of my homies, and definitely someone and I've done certain things with, Dr. Yusef Bunchi Shakur, speaks always. I remember in doing our State of Black Detroit, he spoke directly to, I'm looking past what's like-minded and looking towards what's like-valued. And in that time, people, I believe if you're listening to this, and if we've probably had exchanges in person, you're very familiar with my thought process in just taking an analysis of what's being spoken to. And in what's being spoken to, often this leads into one of those discussions of, capitalism or how we're programmed to condition, which I think is some validity in that, but I definitely think a lot in our society. And even when I look at other international societies, I'm not as versed in those places, but we as humans, we're in functioning and navigating through life. I think we're looking for absolutes, which absolutes are not. They're very uncommon. And I give this to more so speak to when I think of what's valued. My values have developed over time and just experience a wisdom of life. So I don't think that I'm not. I don't think I've lost values I've once had, but to the term you just spoke to, it's like layers on top of where things kind of come from. It's like the whole give what you can. You all ever been in church or any place where they're raising an offering, and if the billionaire's in there and he writes a check for, I don't know, $1 million, and then it's like a person from the neighborhood, like an elder from the neighborhood, and they give $10, but they only got 15. It's like, it's a different balance of what this value proposition, which is definitely more of a business term, is even kind of coming to. So even in understanding someone's values, and this, I'm sure, is a lot of the Capricorn and always seeking context for things, I have to have an understanding. So one of the things that I always have spoken, and I guess we're just in one of these conversations right now, is I have a couple different things that I've grown over time. Respect is definitely one of them. And I think that oftentimes in America that's spoken, especially for men, because I think that that definition of success goes into a lot of how men, we define who we are. And for whatever reason, maybe around actually late 20s, just due to experiences that I've had, I've kind of pulled back from that. And I'm not necessarily saying that I'm welcoming disrespect per se, but for me to value respect from someone, I have to have respect for your definition of respect, which I know that throws a lot of people off, and it makes them think they're like, oh, so you're thinking you're better? I'm like, no, I'm just like, this is like, we're in different worlds. So I can navigate it and dismiss it because I can move on, because clearly I don't think we necessarily define this the same way. And I just know as a principle and a value, that is something that so often we as men stand on, especially I think when men feel as though, and this is still all based on perception, that they have less. Hence, some of the most violent responses to anything I've seen, even up to murder, has been over men speaking about respect. And looking at this whole situation, like what Malcolm X spoke, nothing's more dangerous than a person that feels as though they have nothing to lose. So it's like everything to gain based on this respect. Like, as much as it's like you stepped on his shoe, he's not interpreting it that way. Now, I know I'm giving like a long diatribe in this, but it kind of even goes into like where those values stand. So many of these other more altruistic traits that I speak to, so like respect, trust, empathy, compassion, love, that all evolves over time, even in those definitions. And you started really kind of with that self-work. So in that self-work, how often, or I shouldn't even say that, more so, like, what have you found in life, or you've seen in practice, are ways in which people can kind of tap into some of these ideals that are like very altruistic traits, and really kind of just have a better understanding of even how they're defining it for themselves?
Yeah. This is such a big question. As I always enjoy talking with you, because we're going to go deep, right? And so many people say they love themselves. So many people.
Yeah.
But when we get down to it, many people don't actually know what that means, right? And, to love yourself really is to love the world. There's this, one of my favorite movies, there's a quote that says something to the effect of that you have the capacity to love the whole world. We all have the capacity to love the whole world. And yet people harm us, right? But people can also help to heal us. And so I think first acknowledging the truths, right? What are the truths that we have faced over our lifespan that has made us feel unlovable, right? Many people don't want to face the truth. This is, right? It's much easier to say, I love myself, and if aesthetically I look good, then like I'm good. But the reality is that even if we look good aesthetically, right? If we're talking about well-being, right? And feeling good about who we are, it's not sustainable. Certainly, their research shows that when we look good on the outside, we actually feel good on the inside, right? But really feeling good about who we are means that no matter what package we're in, we're good. We're good with the package. We're good with the size. We're good with our mental aptitude. We're good with our personality, our communication style, how we show up and lead, the mistakes that we make. We're good with all of it. And not because we're not accountable for the ways in which we harm, right? Because love means that we are accountable to ourselves and to others when we harm. So I have a whole chapter in my book about self-love, and a whole chapter that follows, 18 practices to unapologetically love yourself. The reason why this is so important is because people can come in our lives and they can help to cultivate love within ourselves. My ex-husband is a great example of this. He was one of my healers. My first book, Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal, Find Liberation and Joy, is about my lived experience with complex childhood trauma, having 8 out of 10 ACEs. So, of course, I'm someone that is wounded. Of course, I'm someone that has had a hard time building and sustaining relationships, in part because of this pain that I endured as a child. Now, that's not an excuse, right? But it's context to help us to understand and appreciate how we got to a certain point.
Wait, I got to put a pin in that because I love that. And I think oftentimes people hear something and are and it can be projected as like, "Well, I don't need the reason to an excuse," but I definitely find, which this is also something to be defined for each person. Context is very much so needed for a lot of things, and I don't, I don't necessarily know how much other people more so value it, but continue. I just had to uplift
Yeah,
that.
no, I love that,
You
right?
know.
So it's not, and so sometimes what happens is that people can go the other extreme, right? It's like,
Mhm.
well, I'm not going to let anybody ever harm me
Mm.
because I've endured all this harm, and so I'm going to just support myself, and that's a form of selfishness, right? So loving ourselves is really about how do I cultivate a practice of care for my body, my mind, and my spirit. And so that means that every day there is something that I'm doing to invest in myself because I love myself and I am acting in accordance with this claim that I have of love, right? What we really love, we care for. And I want to, this is very important. What we love, we care for. And love is not just a feeling. Yes, we fall in love with people. And the book talks about how we're hardwired for connection from our sight, our touch, smell, sound. Everything that happens in our environment is helping us to get in connection with other humans because that is actually our human design. We are supposed to be in harmony and in community with others. We've lost our way. Pain forces us to lose our way, essentially. Love can bring us back to our natural design. And so, yes, other people can help to ignite that in ourselves, but the most sustainable practice to draw in the love that we're worthy of from other people is to start with self and to continue with a practice of love for self. And it's not enough just to say it, because if you don't act in according to it, the universe doesn't believe you. Right? If you say that you're ready for partnership, but you haven't made enough room in your life for someone, the universe can't deliver it to you because your actions are not really in alignment with what you say you want. Your actions are in alignment with who you say you are. Now, what I want to name is that we are all a contradiction. Every single person on the planet, there's a separation between who we are and who we aspire to be. The work of self-love practice, right, is about widening that gap so we can get closer and closer to who we've always been to begin with, so that we are less of a contradiction and so that we can have more of the life that we're essentially worthy of. And so when I think about love, like what's bigger than love? What's more great than love, right? No accomplishment, no amount of education, none of those things will ever fuel us the way that love fuels us. Nothing on the planet will. So so if we believe, hopefully we'll be convinced that it's the most important task, then we will be working in concert with that to make it become a reality in our lives.
I mean, as you're speaking, that definitely giving more knowledge and perspective and also wisdom into that. The only thing in my mind is actually like it was a huge hit in the 80s, but really originally written from George Benson. But I think a lot of people, I mean, at this point, you may more so know it from what's his name, Randy Watson and Sexual Chocolate. Shout out Coming to America. But the song, I believe the children are our future. That's a George Benson song where Aretha Franklin gives her rendition of it, which I believe becomes the hit that it is. But like the lyrics alone it's I guess you could say like it's poetic or like it could be like a mantra, but the whole concept, it's like, finding the joy in children's laughter to be like that gateway to really find and reconnect to the love of, who you are, you know what I'm saying? And, read the lyrics whenever you got some time, or listen to the song again, listen to the George Benson version again, and possibly watch Coming to America again. Do the whole thing. But
Coming to America never gets old.
Talk about it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
And those lyrics never get old either.
That too.
Very relevant.
And as you speak to where that stands in love and finding that, even that journey itself, and you talk about like partnership, you're right. Some of those attractions, like, I know this sounds definitely odd, Lord knows, I mean, whoever watching, but I mean, I believe most of the romantic relationships I had, it's still so much love for every woman that I've been with. That's still there from like so much of the those moments of joy, which I'm one to really more so like look back to the times that were more joyful, and also kind of get wisdom from those times where it was really challenging. And a lot of those challenges, I feel, from those personal relationships myself, dealt a whole lot more with my insecurities of where I felt like, I know you said like we are who we want to be and who we are. This is, I mean, some, not a lot, but some Sigmund Freud stuff, I do think is some validity to it. I think it's three though, like kind of more so in that whole concept where he would like, it's like who we are is who we want to be, but then it's who we project we are when we engage with others. And this all definitely goes into, as you say, it can be very much contradictions and hypocritical, but depending upon these different spaces and places, we're all gonna, we're going to be, either moving towards more so where we want to be, who we really are, or what we want to project. And it's tough because a lot in this society, a lot of this conditioning in this society, it creates a lot of these ideas of what success looks like, what what responsibility looks like, what common sense looks like. And that's more so what's usually going to be projected, but it also puts a lot of like what I would consider unreasonable expectations on people.
Yeah.
And even as you were walking in, you're like, man, you moving and shaking like as usual. And actually, I recognize I'm doing a lot less than I have before. I'm sharing more like in spaces, but definitely like pulling back less and really looking more so at capacity, because so much of this was like in my mind from looking at my father more so of like, oh, okay, around this age, this is where like my father and his practice like he hit a point in his practice where he was more so at a space where he was like, okay, I'm starting to pick and choose a whole lot more of what projects I want to take on in business. And I subconsciously and then explicitly kind of looked at that path as this is how it looks. Whereas I'm sure if I would have embodied more of that presence of mind earlier in my life and my journey in business and what I do in creativity, I'd be closer to where I am now years ago. But I mentally kind of put the fence up. I like that you use that term too. Before things. And I'm sharing and definitely going deep here, but I also think that deals somewhat with that state of having more love for who you are as a person, because you'll put the fence up of like, I don't know, whatever, you know what I'm saying? It could be like I'm overweight, I lost my job, I lost my romantic partner or partners, whatever you got going.
Come on.
It's 2026.
Come on, I talk about polyamory in the book. Yep.
Yep. And, your business, you don't live where you're supposed to live. Like, it's so many things that are external away from like the emotion that we definitely have, where it's like part of that whole path towards success and projecting and manifest destinies. And I think it's definitely said like, okay, you got to think and move in it, which will attract. But oftentimes, and shout out Sterling Toes on this one, the more we feel we're there, that will welcome way more, I found in my life, of what you seek than just the thought of it. Because if you're like, okay, so for instance, if the goal is to, I don't know, own a or it's something you've done. If your goal is, I want to travel the world and meet people. All right, you can think into that, but then you could be like, okay, when I start traveling the world and meeting people, this is how I'm going to feel about myself. Because I feel when I'm traveling and connecting with others in different cultures and community, I'm like this, I'm like this, I'm like this. You start moving into that direction of feelings, you're going to attract those realities way sooner, I think, sometimes even than the thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, you've really dropped a beautiful manifestation nugget today, right?
Okay.
So I'm hoping that people are listening. The way that we make things come to pass is by believing things are already here because they are. And a lot of times we're dealing in the material world, right? We're dealing with what we see, with what we're experiencing in the present. But the reality is that we have a rightful place to take up the abundance that is connected to our birthright. Love is a part of that. Romantically, friendships, money, like these are all things that are connected to abundance. And so if we're talking about conjuring is claiming things are as if they already are, regardless of how the landscape looks. And so there was this story years ago where Jim Carrey was saying, long before he became famous, that he wrote himself a $15 million check when he could barely pay his rent.
Yeah.
He knew that the money was already here. It was a matter of time before he could access it. So if we're talking about the matters of the heart, I don't care how long you've been in a loveless relationship or how many broken relationships that you've had, this could be the moment that everything shifts. If indeed you can anchor yourself in the truth of the matter. And the truth of the matter is that you're worthy of love. You're worthy of love. We're worthy of a wealth. We're worthy of living in our purpose. We're worthy of, relationships that help to shape us and mold us and inspire us. We're worthy of everything that we want in this lifetime if we are willing to do the work. And it does start with our ability to see things as if they are, regardless of how long they haven't been that way.
Yeah. Another song is like this. I'm not Kari dropping songs today.
Well, are we gonna have to do a playlist?
Hey, I don't even know where you get this one because this is an old Negro spiritual, but it's one that always like carried on. It's like before I be a slave, I be buried in my grave and then go on to my Lord and be free. That's one of those spirituals that was even as tragically and horrifically, many of our ancestors were enslaved. But to think like this is, you know what I'm saying? Like this is one of damn near like a mantra of it. You know what I'm saying? And the rhythm of where that's coming from, because it's like back to like, as you say, it's like you're that same conjuring, which in this same world, I think it also causes a lot of those disconnects. So definitely another doctor that I had on just recently, and I spoke right to it. So it's like, I'm gonna probably run these concurrent. They can like connect. So shout out to Dr. Rose Moten. Dr. Rose is amazing.
Yes.
But I was sharing a little bit that I learned in some caretaking from my late aunt of a lot that my aunt with dementia, but also anxiety and depression. And she kind of concurred it, but for the longest, I kind of did not understand some of these things that my aunt dealt with loneliness, anxiety, and depression, just for how my mind couldn't like get to this. And then I started understanding more in the journey. And it, to me, I'm still at the root of like depression is a level of confusion and pain, and in a lot of ways, like living in the space of things that have happened, that pain and that confusion and hurt stand in. Anxiety is the same thing of what you think will happen. The presence of now And people speak to this often in a lot of, like, as you say, like new age, but this been around for forever because in many of the, and I'm a nerd about a lot of stuff. So this is where y'all, I'm talking all day, but a lot of the what we would say native or indigenous cultures speak directly into the presence of now, which clearly means obviously many African cultures, I'm sure Asian cultures, and Eastern philosophy itself is rooted in a lot of this. But that power of now is big if you can live in the moment of now.
Yes.
And a lot of this is where I will agree with with Yusef and Kwasi and many anti-capitalists, because part of it is always to have you think of, okay, but you need to go here next. You know what I'm saying? You get a bachelor's degree, the first thing people gonna say is, so when you gonna get a master's? And it's like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? You get a master's, it's like, when you gonna get a PhD? You know what I'm saying? You open one office and it's like, you gonna get one on the east side too? Like all of these things. And I don't think these people are coming from like a place of wanting to pressure you. I've probably been one of the people to say this as well. It's like, this is what's wired in to never kind of even be centered in what's happening right now. And you can control so much of now, because what happened before, and clearly it definitely can be a lot of pain connected to that. And what could happen tomorrow? It could be a lot of pain there. Now is you got control for.
Excuse me. Yeah, I love that you have named this because, excuse me, being present is one of the greatest gifts that we can give to ourselves and to other people, right? Presence allows us to relish in the moment. It allows us to celebrate the things that we have accomplished, right? It slows things down so that we're not thinking about the next yet. There's nothing wrong with thinking about the next. The problem, as you name, though, is that it comes at the expense of relishing in the now. And if we can relish in the now, it makes life so much sweeter. It helps us to be connected to the people that we care about. It helps us to show up in ways that we need to. It helps us to not miss those moments that can cause us to have regrets, right? And so a lot of times when, death is a great example. When people die, right, we're not just grieving the loss of this person. We're also grieving all the ways in which we didn't do. Now, a lot of times people don't talk about that in the process of grief, but that's the reality. People grieve less as long as you have a healthy spiritual practice, a healthy sense of self. There aren't any mental ailments that you're experiencing. For the most part, you're going to be pretty resilient when it comes to losing someone, no matter how much you love them. If you showed up in all the ways that you felt led to.
I wholeheartedly concur with that, especially with, and now, with my aunt passing recently, roles in family have transitioned where I'm like a person in family business. So I could definitely share with anybody. I was actually talking to one of my cousins yesterday because his father just passed not too long ago. But about some of the business of like, it's definitely a business. It's tough that it's so much of a business because you could be in this time of grief, navigating things. But, that's a sidebar more so for like upon my mother's passing, seeing some of the responses from people kind of deal directly with that. That's why I always uplift, like when my mother passed, I don't think we were like ever in my life other than maybe like when I was like very little, maybe like, 7 and under. Like we were really on a great page. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember vividly, like that whole month into her passing, because that was like this house and converting this into this Detroit is Different space was really one of the last projects I was working on. And for people that know this story, and I've shared this before, my mother worked alongside my father so much and worked together in building what his practice was and so much into his business. So at that point in time, I was beginning more so my mom was beginning to work more with me, which was extremely beneficial on many ways. So like during those Murder City match contracts that I had back in the day, the person reaching out to you, it would have been my mama, you know what I'm saying, for those people. So I mean, some of these people I think kind of remember those interactions and engagement, like shout out Dr. Paul and what were throwbacks, a couple people, you know. So we were good, but that was not the case with others. And I've definitely noticed that because nothing's going to weigh on you more. Hence, you know, look to resolve whatever those conflicts are. And sometimes it's not even necessarily just conflicts. It could just be something that like, you know, like it can become more bothersome of like, I don't know. They could just say something as simple as like, hey, could you do this or this for me? You know, looking up, which I'm sure most people do this. I have so many phone contacts in my phone of people that have passed away. Because like mentally, I can't delete the contact. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So even like with a lot of the celebration for my godmother, rest in peace, Joanne Watson, it's like I'm so glad because it was certain like business things that were going on, and I had no idea, like a lot of people, you know, where she was at in that illness. But I'm so glad that I was checking the boxes of the business matters in which I had, because if I would not have, I know that would have weighed on me so much more.
Yeah, yeah. There in the 4 agreements, you know, one of them is to do your best. And doing our best isn't going to look the same always, right? If you're in a season of harvesting, let's say, because you're building your business, you're not going to have as much time and energy on your hands, but you give what you can during that period, right? And so the plan in life is to do what we can, and you said this earlier, with what we have. And at any point in time, that's going to look different. If I have adequate sleep, I'm going to show up differently. If I ate well, I'm going to show up differently. If I had just had a fight with someone, I'm going to show up differently. All of these things, right, they affect our ability to engage. But I think that if we can say that we really did our best in any given situation, it helps to buffer those moments when travesty, right, sets in. When tragedy, travesty, I feel like they're one and the same. And so it doesn't mean, as we know, that when we lose people or things that we care about, that it doesn't hurt us. Of course it hurts. Of course it does. Of course there's grief. But it's not going to hit us the same. And we're going to be able to move forward and to integrate the loss in our lives in a way that is most meaningful, so that we don't get stuck in the pain, we don't get stuck in the hurt, right? And whether we're talking about losing a person that we love, or, you know, a broken relationship, you know, a partner leaves us, or whatever it might be, or we lost a job, or there's lots of ways that grief can show up. But I think that the ways that we can endure it and ride the wave, if you will, to the extent that we can, and expedite the grief process, even though we know that grief is something that never really leaves us. You know, my dad's been gone for 13 years, and there are moments when I'm still moved to deep sorrow about his loss. But, you know, I've memorialized him. There's ways that I celebrate his life. There's ways that, and I can say that the last 11 years of his life, we were not close for most of his life for many reasons.
Yeah.
But the last 11 years, I showed up and I supported him and I was there, and it made it so much easier for me.
Oh, I can
only
imagine.
I have siblings that won't even go to the gravesite, right?
Yeah.
Because of the grief. And whereas I go to the gravesite all the time, because I'm not carrying those same burdens, because I showed up. I showed up.
Yeah. In that, I guess, even in the book, you said it's 18 different practices. I'm not saying break down all 18.
Yeah.
What are, like, could you give like 3 or 4 that people can take in to like move towards better step in that self-love?
Absolutely. So the first thing is self-awareness, right? So self-awareness, acknowledging where we came from, but also doing active work to get to know more of who we are, because we're like an iceberg. And you named this earlier, and to some extent, an idea that you may have had yesterday may not be the idea that you have today. One conversation can shift it. It doesn't mean that we shift like water so that we're always changing, but it means that we're flexible like water. And we're allowing ourselves to evolve more into who we've always been. But we have to discover, and particularly if we've come from pain, because pain becomes a cover-up for aspects of our true identity, right? And in fact, pain can create imposter syndrome. I talk about this in the book. Even perfectionists or the labor, right? And the identity that we have connected to labor, a lot of times, because it's the one thing that we can control, we will put everything we have into it because our identity is very much wrapped up in that, versus an understanding that work is just one facet, right, of who we are. So that self-work and that self-awareness is really important. There's a practice related to celebration. And many people do not celebrate. A lot of times I'll be talking to people and I'll say, "Oh my God, you did X, Y, and Z. How are you celebrating?" They're like, "Oh, well, I did it." And I'm like, "Well, you did it. You're right. You did it. So what we gonna do?" Because this is worthy of celebrating. And whether it's the small things that we do or the really grand things that we do, a celebration could be going to get your favorite coffee drink, right? A celebration could be taking time to binge watch your favorite show. It doesn't have to be these major things, but it's an intentional practice that is in connection to something that you've done in your life, and that's worthy of being honored, which really helps you to relish, right? I keep coming back to this word of relish because so often in life, we're just moving at lightning speed, right? And you named it that we do the one thing and now we're on to the next thing, right? It's never really enough. And the reason why it's never enough is because if anything that we're trying to do on the outside of ourselves to give us a sense of purpose, a sense of peace, a sense of connection, it will never be enough because it has to start from within. Let's see. So I've given you 2. You're right. I don't want to give you all of them.
Yeah,
let me go. Let me go to my chapter really quickly because I don't want to give too much away.
I got you. It's like the you can click the page and then it's like read.
Listen.
It's little notes.
Hey, listen.
Get out your reader's glasses. The readers.
So there's another one. So one of my favorite shows is Parks and Recreation. I go back to it a lot. I have a lot of go-tos. I think we talked about Martin at one point.
Yeah.
I've watched it so many times. So, I work from home. So a lot of times I'll have these shows playing out in the background. So Parks and Recreation has this episode called Treat Yourself. And it's outrageous. It's like ridiculous, the things that they do in this episode. Hilarious. So I would highly recommend if you don't mess with Parks and Recreation, watch that one episode because it is wild. What I love about this concept is that a lot of times, particularly as parents, right? I'm a mother, and a lot of times we are not taking the time to do things for ourselves, right? We're caring for everybody else. And so once in a while, getting that special thing can feel really, really good. And so having a practice of treating ourselves with the small things, with the big things, just like celebration, can be really, really transformational and help us to get more joy out of life. So those are the 3 that I'll leave you with today.
Okay. All right. I'm with it.
Yeah.
All right. So now I guess we can shift a little bit more into you doing a wellness summit here. What's the goal? What will people get for being present? And then how deep do you need to be already, connected to the wellness community? Who's coming?
Yeah. So I'm so excited about the summit. It is called the Detroit Hearth Summit,
Mm.
and we will only be the second in the U.S. to host this.
Okay.
And there are several that have happened all over the globe, though. So we'll be about the 27th in the last 3 years.
Mhm.
Three things people can expect this summit
Okay.
to do. The first is to put Detroit, as I said earlier, on the map as a leader when it comes to well-being practice and really uplifting all the ways that we do that within this beautiful cultural container that we live in. The second is supporting change makers that are out there doing impactful work. And change makers are defined by anyone who's working for the betterment of the world, right? So this could be educators, it could be artists, it could be well-being practitioners, mental health professionals, activists, anyone who's actually creating social change.
Mm.
And the goal would be to help to support them in the cultivation of just giving them a space of respite and creativity and community, and also giving them new ways of thinking about how they infuse well-being in practice, particularly when it comes to art as the universal language. And so I'm gonna name it that way because we know that there's no bound to what art can do from a visual standpoint. And this is why we have art therapy, music therapy, because there's something about igniting the right part of the brain that helps us to heal in ways that just talking through things can't. And, I'm a therapist and I believe deeply in the power of talk therapy. But what I also know is that when it comes to people's well-being, that in folks that have trauma or PTSD, talk therapy has a lot of limitations, right? It has next to no efficacy for people that have had severe trauma, whereas the arts and somatic practices can help us to heal unlike anything else. And this is why also community is so powerful, because these are practices, the community doesn't cost us a dime. Coming together with people doesn't cost us anything. And as you know, in my work, I focus a lot on accessibility when it comes to well-being. And when I think about accessibility, I'm thinking about, can someone pay for it? Can they get to it? Is it in the language that they're going to understand it? And can they actually put it into practice? Is it easy enough for me to apply it into my own life? And then the third thing is really about helping to infuse new ways of well-being, right? And I will say a fourth thing for me that I think is important too is I would love for this to facilitate a deeper investment in well-being efforts in the city of Detroit for the greater good of Detroiters. And so the who is mainly Detroit, right? This is it's going to be Detroit speakers, Detroit artists. I feel very strongly about this being a representation of Detroit in every single way. The majority of the people that will be in attendance will also be Detroiters. We'll be providing scholarships for individuals to attend up to full needs. Those will only be for Detroiters because we want to make sure that Detroiters can get there, right? And there are no barriers for Detroiters to be in the room, essentially. So those are the four things that I would like to see happen as a result of this summit. And then also the who are the Detroit change makers predominantly.
Okay. All right. That sounds definitely like it should be an experience that people should tap into.
Yes. Yes.
When will it be? I know you said October.
Yeah, October 8th through the 10th.
Okay.
We'll start off with an opening reception. I have a great spot in mind. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we'll get a yes from them to host this. And then a day and a half of content that's focused on well-being topics connected to philanthropy, organizational and individual well-being, technology, neuroscience, intergenerational well-being. And so it could be a 5-minute lightning speed talk, or it could be a fireside chat, very experiential in nature.
Okay.
We have workshops that are going to help people to go deeper in terms of, just understanding some of the topics that we highlight. And then arts will be woven from the beginning to the very end. And then we will have a culminating celebration at the Love Building.
Okay.
And so people can anticipate house music,
There you go.
hustling, all the things
Gotcha.
that are very much the spirit of Detroit.
I'm with it. I'm with it. I'm with it. All right. And then also, outside of that, if a person wants to get in contact with you just to, rap with you, see what connections could be made, or seek some of those support, your counseling service.
Absolutely.
How do they reach out?
Absolutely. So people can find me at demarrawest.com. That's the holder of my book, speaking, training. And then, of course, the nonprofit is bewellbeautifulpeople.org. And that's where we focus on accessible healing and liberation support and providing lots of support in all forms for that. And then my newest venture, which is an executive search and virtual executive assistant placement company, is People First Executive, .com. So people can find me at any of those platforms. And on Instagram, I'm at Be Well Beautiful People.
I'm with it. So I'm closed here. Though it's always like your first visit is way more like a traditional. Detroit is different. The second one is always a little bit different in feel and definitely deeper. But would you like to share anything else? Because I know I felt like I was jaw-jabbing.
No, you listen. I love when you jaw jab because you always have compelling things to share.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I would just say that, if individuals feel compelled to go deep in their self-love practice, to have, stronger relationships. You could even be in a 30-year loveless marriage and things can turn around, right? If you've had a hard time finding romantic love that you feel worthy of, or friendships, right, that you feel worthy of, then this book will have something for you. In fact, there are 22 resources in the end of the book to help people put this into practice, but tons of applicable practices all throughout. So very, very digestible, tons of research to make a case for why this is important, how we're hardwired, what it does for our well-being, and ways that we can find our people and keep our people.
Yeah, definitely. With that, something else that was heavy, talking to my cousin the other day too, and then even kind of, my grandma and others. I think the older you get, it does get a little bit more, we're just usually not going to like make friends the way we did when we were younger, just due to what we were into and connecting to. But I've certainly seen from the outside looking in, and also what people speak to, as you get older, the people that I've seen keep stronger relationships with younger people, I think are more so connected to a higher quality of life of what I've seen, and more present in staying active in spaces, because just so often it's certain elders that, sit and they watch so many of the people closest to them pass on. And it moves more and more into like a state of isolation. And you brought this up all the time. We're social creatures. So like if you're not like kind of making some of those intergenerational bonds the same way, that has, from what I've seen, that's definitely has some impacts on a person's livelihood.
Yeah. No, I love that you named intergenerational relationships, because we may not think that that's where we should spend our time and energy.
Yeah.
But the reality is that there's no bound to where a friend could be and who could be a friend, right? I have friends from all walks of life, all over the world, across all ages, across race, all kinds of races. I have made friends everywhere.
There you go.
I've met people in coffee houses. I've met people at networking events. I've met people traveling the world. I've met people everywhere.
Okay.
And so this mantra around no new friends, I want to encourage us to can we write that off?
Hilarious.
Can we write off that no new friends?
Hilarious.
I know there was a whole song about it,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
there was a whole song about it.
I know. And then some of this also goes into like, and it's social conditioning, like the machismo of men itself and kind of where things stand. And some of that, yeah, I definitely, I'm one one that subscribes to some of that too. Like I don't know. I was picking up a rental car. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? And it was just like real early, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna come. I'll go to my barbershop after. And I told so the guy at the counter was like, yeah, man, you got to make sure you get to the barbershop. And I was like, I got the old man barbershop now. And he started laughing. He was like, I got one too. So we just kind of having that discussion.
Yeah.
So for people that don't know, the old man barbershop is like, it's just different than the feel of like the young man barbershop as far as cost, the energy, and just even the conversation. Like it's the same conversation, but it's just from a whole different scope. You know what I'm saying? So, stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Everybody should have both of the experiences, right?
The old man and the young man?
100%. 100%. But you prefer the old man one, right? Because there's so much wisdom. It's so much wisdom in that space. Yeah. It's a beautiful space to be in.
The young man one, I think the line and the scheduling, it's personal things that I combine as inconveniences.
Come on now.
But eventually, if I keep going to the barbershop, I'm going to end up at the young man one because I don't know how much longer Mike D going to be cutting hair. But right now, Mike D kicking it. Love it.
And the young ones are going to become the old ones soon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what
I wonder what the space will become as they age.
I mean, like I was there when it was that, like over the Arca stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Seen some of the pastors pass on. Some of the barbers pass on. But Hawk, it's on Schoolcraft. But even Hawk, Mr. Hawk passed a couple years back. He sold it to this younger dude. Just all types of stuff, and it's still basically the same.
Yeah.
But like the feel. It definitely, there's a different energy of, that's there. And y'all know, guys is watching this laughing because y'all know that, you either at the old man or the young man one, you know what I'm saying?
I wonder what people would say about the beauty shop. If
I have no idea.
Thing.
It seems like just from the outside looking in and like, family members and dating women, it seems, I think, men are definitely way more committed to whoever their barber is than I've seen women when it comes to their hair. Because it seems from the outside looking in, and I'm just speaking from what I've observed and even the Natural Hair Show, like women try to go to whoever's the best at whatever that style is, or possibly like where they get like the deal on like the style, how they want it. Like it's more specific to that. And because I think most men are kind of going to have the same, whatever we do, we just stay with them. But, it's like, it's like, they'll be like, I ain't going to go to her for color, but I'll go to her for that. And I can go here for that. And then, so they may bounce around and have like a collection of, 15 different stylists. And depending upon what they may try next, they'll try somebody new.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a lot of guys, though. It's a lot of dudes doing like the trips to Turkey and Beijing and all types of stuff too. So I don't know. And maybe 20 years from now that happens on the man's side too. But more power if that's what you're doing. I'm tapping out.
I know that's right.
Out.
I know that's right.
When I'm losing the hair, it's like, hey, just tap it out. Just tap it out. Definitely. But thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be in space with you.
Thank you. Peace.
Detroit is different. Detroit